to know whether something should be released or not. However, the competitors, I think, can, if given sort of a week or two to review a new model, can highlight issues and have an incentive to keep all the competitors.
Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Let's challenge level up together. Today I'm trying pass level 251. Let's go.
Well, we're just talking about a week. Honestly, I think as little as a week is all that would be needed for private testing. It's not to hand over the AI. It's just to test it.
Have you proposed this?
Yeah, just to test it via an API or something. I think that would probably be a good thing to do.
Have you proposed it? I mean, you could presumably organize that.
That's what I suggested to Demis, and I guess I'll talk to Daria about it too. There's also, of course, some very competent Chinese AI companies that several that are very good. The new Kimi model.
Kimi K3, yeah, the one that came out last week is, I mean, it's almost as good as Fable, right? So.
Well, I think realistically, Fable is still clearly the smartest model. I think anyone realistically would say that that's still the case. But the Kimi model is getting quite close to Fable. Now, Anthropic had Mythos, from which Fable is derived. I think they had that ready in February. So they've got sort of what they call, I'm not sure what they call it, but Mythos 2 or Fable 6 or something much better than what they had in February. They almost certainly have. Not almost certainly, they certainly have right now. So, and I think they could release it at any time.
Just before we get on to releasing, how do you think about the Chinese models and the geopolitics of it? Are you worried about the Chinese catching up and getting ahead?
Given that the Chinese AI companies are doing as well as they are with a relatively small amount of compute, it seems though that if they had a lot of compute, there's a good chance that they would be the leaders. And at some point, they probably will have a lot of compute.
So they will be the leaders.
There's a good chance that they are the leaders at some point. You can think of like the constraints on AI are essentially electricity and AI chips, and then for physical AI, the robots. China's also got some very good robot companies. In fact, they have these like robot sporting events. I don't know if you've seen some of them.
Yes, I have. I saw the last time I was in Beijing. I saw the robots.
Well, and then they have this sort of like a boxing match or a fighting match with the robots, which is quite entertaining. And I saw some video, a robot that got his head knocked off, kept fighting, even with his head knocked off. It looked pretty funny, but I mean. In fact, I think the robot battles are going to be quite entertaining to watch.
But just
so China's very strong on robots, very strong on digital AI, and if you look at electricity production, you say like AI is a function of whatever the limiting factor is, if it's chips or electricity. China has far more electricity than the United States. In fact, China has more electricity than the United States, Europe, and India combined already, and is heading to, and my guess is China gets to 4 times the electricity production of the U.S., which is roughly proportionate to the population.
What should the U.S. government do about this? I mean, if you presumably it is a little alarming if you have an authoritarian regime far ahead in the most powerful technology, and clearly what the U.S. government's been trying to do is, with the export controls and so forth, keep China back. Do you think they should ban the use of K3, Kimi K3, for example?
Well, the U.S. government can't. They can pass some law that prevents U.S. companies from using Chinese models, but they can't stop the rest of the world from using them. So it's not like the U.S. government has authority over China or the rest of the world.
Do Do you think they should stop US companies from using them? There's talk of that right now, right?
I don't think that helps. That won't stop China from being the leader in AI. Really, it's for digital intelligence. It comes down to how much AI compute do you have, how many chips do you have, and how much power do you have, how much electricity do you have. So the constraint right now, I think, is actually slightly more on power and cooling than it is on AI chips, because the power demands of the AI chips are very, very high. We'll talk about water demands, but really the water usage of AI is negligible, almost nothing. But the electrical demand is very high.
That's why you're thinking of orbital data
No!
centers. That's,
Yeah.
but that one of the
Yes.
striking things.
I
of
almost
UK3, right,
done,
is
but
that
unluckily
And
I
China is also,
failed. So let's try it
I think
again.
closer than most people
Now we
realize
challenge the
to
sim level
solving
250
the
first.
lithography problem,
Let's go.
which would enable them to make AI chips at very large volumes. So I think there's this shouldn't develop into just a China conversation, but so the current constraint is electricity outside of China. In China, the constraint is chips. Once we address the power constraint with AI data centers in space, then the constraint will once again be chips outside of China.
That suggests to me that you need China and the US, if you're going to have some overall safety constraints, that they will need to work together. If you are going to try and you suggested, the five automakers here working.
Probably it should include the Chinese companies that are doing frontier AI models too.
And do you think governments need to be involved?
My recommendation would be that if some of the leading companies in AI say that a new model is very dangerous, then they should inform the government. And the new model is very dangerous, and that the company producing that model is not taking steps to address the danger, then they should alert the government to take action to limit the release of that model. And that could be action by the Chinese government or action by the U.S. government. It's really just the U.S. government and the Chinese government that have the power to take action here.
But I guess people would be worried about
What?
relying on a group of model builders to decide
No
whether to
way.
do this. I mean, if you look at what the U.S. government has done with Mythos, they stepped in because they were worried about the cybersecurity.
Someone in the government figured out that Mythos had some
Okay,
scary
let's try again.
cybersecurity
The sim level.
risks.
Let's
It was
do it.
Amazon. Amazon highlighted this, and Amazon called the White House.
So you'd have a system where the model makers would check each other's work. If there was something that worried them, you'd tell the government.
Yeah.
The government would then think.
If there's something that was worrisome and that company was not doing anything to address that risk, then that would be the moment for government to step in and take action, which is literally what just occurred
How
with
soon does
Mythos.
all this have to happen?
Well, I think it'd be good to do that. I think immediately, really.
Yeah, that's what people keep telling me. We have to get this some kind of system in the next 6 months because of the pace at which the models are improving.
Yeah, 6 months is a long time.
So you think shorter than that?
Well, I mean, there's so many AI breakthrough announcements, sometimes multiple per day. I mean, how many were there last week?
A lot.
I lost track. You know?
Yeah, a lot.
Um,
So you basically, whether it's Demis's proposal or others, you need to get together and get this set up kind of now, it sounds like you're telling me.
Yeah, I would recommend that we at least have some sort of informal weekly or bi-weekly call, and that there's maybe a week or 2 weeks of early access by competitors. And
Yes.
that's why I think the incentives work, is because if competing companies, I think, are likely to understand if something is a security risk, and they're not going to be shy about highlighting that the competitor's model should be delayed in release. I think the incentive structure does work quite well there. And if this is sort of how it works with the Motion Picture Association, it's an industry group that decides how movies should be rated, whether it's appropriate for young children or not, and that seems to have worked quite well. So, and then you really just ask the government to intervene if a company's doing something very dangerous and refuses to take action to reduce the danger.
Do you think this is a tricky one, but you guys don't much like each other, and you don't much trust each other. You're insulting each other on social media constantly. So do you think you can do that with people that you dislike, that where there seems to be such kind of personal vitriol between some of these leaders?
Yes. Well, I'm not a fan of Sam Altman because
You're watching my interview with Elon Musk. If you want to get early access to other interviews, subscribe to The Economist by clicking the link above. Now, back to the interview.
you started a nonprofit that was meant to be an open source AI company, and
What? What?
run by the world.
We try again.
In fact, the reason the Anthropic team left
This
OpenAI
is
because
my
they didn't trust Sam Altman.
7th time for trying the
Wouldn't exist,
same
they would still be at
level.
OpenAI.
Let's go.
I think Dario is a very principled person. He cares about things a lot. Cares about the future of the world, and I think everyone I've met at Anthropic so far has been. No one set off my evil detector. They always seem like they're well intentioned. And the road to hell is, I think, mostly paved with bad intentions. There are a few well-intentioned paving stones in there, so we don't want to be complacent. But at the end of the day, if we have to talk, we'll talk. I mean, set aside our personal differences for the good of the world.
Good of the world. Well, that's a very good thing for the rest of us to hear.
Yeah.
Can we turn to one other risk that people worry about, particularly, I think, ordinary Americans, where AI has become incredibly unpopular. 75% of people are worried about it, and I think they worry about their jobs. And if you look at, Dario has said famously, 50% of entry-level white-collar jobs will be gone within a few years. You're building humanoid robots.
Yes, he also said, Dario did dig his own grave here regarding Mythos, because he said,
Oh no.
Mythos is like super scary, terrifying,
No
and
way.
also, by the way, we're going to release it. And then it's like, what do you mean?
Terrible. Stuck
You know,
two
so I
fruits
think
together.
I think probably in the future we'll choose his words differently.
Okay, let's saw it
Because
first.
obviously, if you terrify everyone and then say, we're releasing this
Watermelon,
terrifying thing,
cherry.
people will obviously be alarmed about that.
Terrible.
You've literally told them to be scared, and then you release the scary thing, and so they will be scared. That is natural.
So I certainly don't want you to alarm people, but I do think there is a really important debate about how quickly and to what degree AI has displaced people from jobs. Because it is, as you say, within 10 years, there's more intelligence, artificial intelligence, than any human intelligence.
Yes.
And if you're ahead of everyone, at least in this country, on powering humanoid robots, that's also going to be kind of factory work. So are you closer to Dario, let's say, in your sense of the pace at which jobs are going to be displaced?
I do think it's going to be a bumpy road, because AI will be able to do any job better than any person can do that job. And that will be true very quickly of jobs that are digital, or really anything that involves a person at a computer or on a phone. AI can do all of that. We'll be able to do all of that very soon. I mean, for software engineering, we already have a situation where AI is better than at least 90% of humans at writing software. Or 90% of professional software engineers at writing software. And it really is getting to the point where it'll be better than 99%, and then it'll get to the point where there's just no way to compete. It'll get to what I call Stockfish level. So Stockfish.
Okay,
Because
yeah.
Stockfish is the chess program
Yeah.
that Stockfish is so good at chess that it will easily beat Magnus Carlsen or anyone at chess even running on a small computer. I suspect that you could probably run Stockfish on your phone and beat Magnus Carlsen. That's how good it is at chess. And that's how good AI will be at writing software.
And beyond software?
And that applies to everything.
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 But what about you for physical jobs, for assembly jobs? You will also need the capability in humanoid robots, which so far isn't there yet, is it?
Right. So that's why I said digital AI and then physically manifested AI in the form of robots, where the robot is more or less an end effector. It would have some amount of local intelligence, but be managed by a large AI model. And I've said many times, I think work is going to be optional. So, so I think maybe a good comparison would be gardening. Like, you don't have to garden. You don't have to grow vegetables in your garden. You can go to the store and there are going to be pristine vegetables, or you could grow vegetables in your garden and they will actually be less perfect. Your tomatoes are not going to be as plump and juicy as the ones at the store. They'll look a little artisanal. But if you go to a friend's house and they make dinner and it's with vegetables from their garden, it's a nice touch.
So that's what
No,
I see.
in the world. What?
Truly, 251 is a hard level. Let's try again.
Universal high income.
But how are you going to get there? Let's talk about the politics of this, because right now, if we look at the political pressures in most countries, people are very, very worried about this, very against it. I mean, it seems to me that there's a risk that you're heading more for revolution than for an easy route to this nirvana you're playing out.
I mean, it will be a bumpy road. I'm not suggesting it will be that everything will be smooth sailing here. So, I mean, there are many jobs that used to exist that don't exist because of computers. I mean, the word computer used to refer to a person doing computations. Like, that used to be a job description of a person. And you can see pictures online of buildings that have entire skyscrapers just filled with people doing calculations to do things like calculate the interest on your bank balance. This is how things were done for a long time until computers came around. And even in the beginning, computers were very expensive and hard to use.
What?
So the thing that's different here is that the pace of change is radically accelerated. So, but still, some people were upset that their job of calculating bank interest would no longer be available. But now I think you'd be hard pressed to find people who wanted to do that job. So I think I have a suggestion for, say, science fiction books people might want to read to get a sense of what the future will be like. And the best envisioning of an AI future that I've read are the books by Ian Banks, the Future books.
I'm just reading Succession. Let's agree that could be where we end up. I'm
Okay,
concerned about
let's
the road.
challenge
we
the
live in democracies, and people are
night
very worried
time.
about
I guess it's
So I guess two questions.
night times
Firstly, do you
fail.
have to have massive redistribution from people like you to the people who are losing their jobs? Do you need to pay more tax? Do you have much higher taxes on capital so that you fund some kind of universal income? Otherwise, what do people live off?
I think that the Treasury should just simply issue people checks.
But where's the revenue coming from? I mean, I'm enough of an economist. If you just issue checks, you're going to have inflation.
This is like a lot of what we're trying to think about is these things were relevant in the past, they will not be relevant in the future. So, like inflation is simply the ratio of money to goods and services. So, if the goods and services output increases dramatically, if it increases, 1,000%, you can literally
What?
print, or these days change the database, or print money. You create money in the database, provided the creation of that money is less than the rate at which goods and services increase, you actually have deflation. So I'll make a prediction, which is that deflation will be the issue, not inflation.
No.
Because as the output of goods and services increases,
It's really
if the output of goods
terrible.
and services increases faster than the money supply, you will have deflation.
I'm perfectly willing to believe that. You may
It's
well
just
be
a
right. Yeah,
statement of fact,
absolutely, you may well be right. But I'm really hung up on how we get from the current polarized, angry, fearful policy we have now to this nirvana. And I think you can paint a picture where people are so scared by this, they essentially try to stop it. Maybe they can't, but you get nationalized, there's a kind of, far left government, there's exorbitant tax increases, the kind of economy crumbles because people are so worried about a future, which does sound quite scary as you describe it. So how do you handle the politics now?
It's exhilarating and terrifying.
But if you were in the, exactly.
Honestly, if you ask me on any given day, in fact, even intraday, I've gone from exhilaration to terror regarding AI. So I want to be clear, I'm not sort of I'm not trying to be sort of candide here and just be some, everything's wonderful, some Panglossian view of the world where everything's, going to be great, no risk. I'm saying there is some risk.
I think we agree on that. I guess I'm trying to be more sort of
Unlock your stay for less with app-exclusive prices. Download the Booking.com app today.
small, bore, and practical, and think about what can be done now to limit those risks. And you gave a very strong argument for what you and your fellow model makers could do. What should governments do?
I think it probably would be good for us to coordinate and just highlight. So,
Try again. my
in fact,
10th time for the
I've set a
same
record for the most
level.
amount of taxes ever paid by by a human.
That's also because you're the world's richest man.
Well, even before that. So my guess is that I will pay many trillions in tax, and I'm fine with that. So yeah, that's just the way it's going to be. But I don't think in a future where money is relevant, I think
Yeah.
taxation also becomes somewhat irrelevant.
And what about giving people a sense that they have a share in the
What?
upside?
Sure.
Giving people shares in SpaceX,
Interesting.
Tesla. Do you think that's and there's a lot of talk about this right now.
Well, one of the reasons I took SpaceX public is so that the public could participate in, they could own a piece of SpaceX, whereas as a private company, we're very limited in the number of shareholders we're allowed to have before going public. So as a public company, we can have millions of shareholders. As a private company, we're limited to just a few thousand shareholders. So
Do you think there should be distribution of shares, like, the Alaska Wealth Fund is there for, could you imagine a world, and some people talk about the Trump accounts being a kind of vehicle for this, that a share of your equity goes to ordinary Americans?
right. Well, in the taxes that I pay, I mean, I'll for my stock options, I pay 40% income tax on a national basis, and then because I spend, I don't know, about 30% of my time in California, thereabouts, I pay another sort of roughly a third of the California state taxes, which is now around 15%. So I pay about 45% in taxes, just so people know this. I don't know. So roughly half. Then when I die, there'll be another
Terrible.
sort of 45%, roughly half, that will be taxed. So at the end of the day, I'll have a quarter of what I have. That's pretty much all it gets me.
I failed
Until
10
I guess the AI is
times.
so
Now
smart
I'm
that
challenging the 7th time.
it's in charge.
Let's
and
go.
that point, controlling companies won't really matter.
Well, let's talk about that, because I think one of the other things that worries people about the direction we're heading in, and I'm going to caricature it, but people think that the direction of the world is being shaped by a very small number of incredibly powerful people, and you are right at the top of that list.
So
Not-
what else is this different from the past?
I agree with you. I think it was like that at the
When wasn't that the
No,
case?
it was ever thus, but
It was ever thus, exactly.
it is as you've described very vividly, it's an incredibly rapid change. And so let's start with control of your company, which you definitely have now. After the
SpaceX.
IPO, you have 80% odd of voting shares, and as I
Yeah.
understand it, you can only be removed by a vote of shares which you yourself control. So tell me if I'm wrong, but I think
Yeah, well,
you could
there's
go
a few companies
crazy.
in that bucket. By the way, the AI companies, like Google's in that bucket. Alphabet is controlled by Larry Sergey.
But I think yours is more extreme. The
No,
inability
it's
to
the same level of they have voting control of that company. Mark Zuckerberg has control of the Meta, and Mark is trying very hard on the AI front, and I think probably will also have a leading AI. I think he released one last week. So I think he'll be one of the, Meta will be one of the AI companies.
But is it sensible for one person to have so much control over a company?
I really just need to make sure that I can focus on long-term. By long-term, I just mean in the 5 to 10 years. So one of the challenges with being a public company is that it is the sort of the pressure to have great results every single quarter, but and to not really invest in things that may only pay off in 5 to 10 years. And in the case of SpaceX, I want to extend consciousness beyond Earth and have a growing civilization on the moon, Mars, and elsewhere in the solar system. The return, I think ultimately this would have a very high return on investment, but in the short term, we'll be spending all this money on a moon base and a Mars base, and then people are like, I'm going to get all this pressure for like, well, you missed your earnings this quarter because you spent too much on Mars. I'm like, yes. By the way, that was in the S1 prospectus, and is literally listed as a thing we will do. So, but they still get grumpy about these things, you know. So they're like, well, you had whatever, you know, you said your gross margin would be this, and it's actually slightly worse, and now we're going to punish you, and the short sellers all descend upon you, and you get a lot of pressure.
You're going to get a lot of that.
Yeah, so I just need some way to sort of, you know, say like, listen, guys, we're going to focus on 5 to 10 year or longer time horizon investments. This will depress our short-term earnings, but I mean, if you take a long-term view, and there are investors, we have many investors that do take a long-term view. In fact, I'm a big fan of the retail investors. In fact, I find our retail investors, on balance, they're very insightful.
Oh no!
And whether they get promoted or not is
It's
dependent on how their
difficult
portfolio
but
does.
also
And they only
interesting.
have a few
So
years
let's check
to
again.
make these decisions.
This is my 12th
and they're
time
evaluated based
for
on those decisions over
trying
the course of sometimes
the
only
sim level.
a year or less.
Let's go.
And so since they're under pressure to have immediate returns, they then put companies under pressure to have immediate returns. So once you understand the incentive structure, the behavior naturally follows.
What about, though, key man risk? I mean, what happens, you know, heaven forbid, but what happens if you get run over by the proverbial bus tomorrow? You know, it is, you have total control over these companies. Do you have a plan for how they would progress without you?
I think they would actually do very well for several years. And, you know, there's a clear roadmap or space map, I should say, for SpaceX. And there's a roadmap, actually for Tesla, literally. So I think there's, you know, if you look at Apple after Steve Jobs, Steve Jobs had, you know, he had a strategic vision and a bunch of products that he had ideas for, and Apple has done very well. But when you don't have a creative genius like Steve Jobs, what you miss, what Apple's missing are the incredible breakthrough products.
Yeah.
So they make amazing phones, you know, great computers, but Apple hasn't come up with this sort of Steve Jobs level breakthrough product.
So by analogy, that's what you bring to all of your companies. You mentioned Mars. You know, most people think of you as the man who wants to, you know, create a colony on Mars so we have multi-planetary civilization.
I've been saying that for such a long time.
You have, but now you seem more focused on AI and what AI will do in the next 10 years. And you sound much more excited about using the moon as a base from which to, you know, pop out orbital AI satellites. Have you shifted your attention away from Mars, or are you as interested in colonizing Mars as you ever were?
I'm interested in the set of actions that propagate consciousness into the future to the maximum degree possible. So that the future light cone of consciousness is as big as we could, you know, like that. You know, there's an exciting future where we're a spacefaring civilization out there among the stars, and the great things that are envisioned in the non-dystopian sci-fi books and movies become real one day. I sort of want the Star Trek, you know, Star Wars future. The Star Wars was the first movie I ever saw in the theater, by the way.
Really?
It's probably maybe had a profound effect on me, I suppose. So I remember I was, you know, blew my mind, honestly. I think I was 6 years old, and I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Has your life been about making that happen?
Yeah, I didn't think it would be, but when I was young, but my life feels somewhat surreal. I can't believe these things are actually happening, you know.
I think the world
It
feels
makes
somewhat
me
surreal.
believe in simulation theory, where it's like, well, this, like the things I'm doing are so preposterous that it's hard to believe they're real. I mean, we've got Starship, which is the largest, most powerful flying object ever made. And we intend to launch that more than once per hour.
I know, I read that. And we can, people can quibble about how quickly it happens, but I think based on your track record, we should assume it will happen at some point.
It will happen.
I'm just sort of struck that when I am as blown away by this world as you are, and I watch it from a much more naive level, but for me, the whole evolution of AI and the capabilities of these models is in and of itself so mind-blowing.
It's pretty much happening as I thought it would.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
And not just me, many people predicted this. Like Ray Kurzweil's predictions have been remarkably accurate.
Yeah, the singularity.
Yeah.
Approaching. Let's go back more immediately to the here and now. We've talked about concentration of control in your companies. You've made a very good case for why you should have it. You also have, through Starlink, incredible geopolitical power. I mean, I'm one of your customers. Excellent product. But without them, the Ukrainians would have been in serious trouble. And
yes, the Ukrainian government has publicly thanked Starlink many times for being instrumental in defending Ukraine.
And you recently decided to prevent the Russians in the occupied territories from having access to Starlink.
Well, no, we were never at any point selling Starlink to Russians.
But they were grabbing it, right? They were using it.
Yes,
now stopped them from doing that.
Well, they essentially got Starlink units that they ordered through Ukraine, and then smuggled them into into eastern Ukraine where the Russians are, and were then using them in some cases for attacks. Now, in order to address this, we worked with the Ukrainian government to create a whitelist of approved Starlink terminals. Now, this has some downsides because a whole bunch of people who were just innocent users of Starlink and just trying to access the internet for work or for education now don't have Starlink.
These are geopolitical decisions of consequence. How do you feel about having that power? You could determine the outcome of wars. How does that feel? And is it right that you should have that power?
Well, I'm not sure we're determining the ultimate outcome of the, say the war in Ukraine. I think I do hope that there's some sort of peace agreement reached soon because. Thinking here of people saying, well, Russia should completely withdraw,
I'll
etc.
try
But this is not
again.
realistic. I really think there needs to be some, a piece that is, we have to be pragmatic about this. What I think would be terrible is if there's another 3 years of people dying senselessly at the front lines. And you have to say like, well, how do you explain to the children of the men that are dying at the front lines? Russia, on the Russian side too, by the way, they're being conscripted and sent there and white, offended by sort of fancy diplomats who have, 7-course dinners in luxurious places while people are dying at the front lines, and who pontificate about how Russia should withdraw, but Russia's not going to withdraw. So there really needs to be an accepted peace along those lines.
And do you think it's your responsibility to play a role in tipping the scales towards what you see as the right way to peace?
I've been advocating peace for a long time. I posted a few years ago that there really needs to be some concession here to Russia. This is not me being pro-Russia, I'm just being pragmatic. or people will die for years with nothing achieved. And that is exactly what happened.
I don't know. I mean, the Ukrainians
Exactly what
are
happened.
doing. The Ukrainians are doing pretty well right now at, with their incredible drone capacity hitting inside Russia, and the kind of general consensus is that the balance of the war is shifting. And my point is not so much
Ukraine
about
is
what the
not
right.
going to retake those territories. It is not going to happen.
My interest is really on whether you think, given that you have through Starlink, you have an incredible power, whether it's appropriate that you should wield it. And that's quite rare, that an individual actor has such power by turning on and off a capability to shape conflict.
Well, is there something you think I should do differently?
I mean, I think you were right to support Ukraine. I think that, as it won't surprise you, I think that the Russian aggression was, for many, many reasons, an appalling aggression. And I think that was an important thing that you did.
Yeah, I mean, I did a very deep dive into the background of that conflict to understand exactly what was going on. I'm reminded of the old adage that there are no angels in war.
It's a similar tone, I think, about domestic politics, where you've played a big role domestically, politically here. You spent a lot of money on Donald Trump's re-election. After the election, you got very actively involved. Through Doge, you tried to cut a lot of spending, reshape the government. How do you feel that it wasn't hugely successful in the sense that, there wasn't nearly as much spending cut as you tried? How do you, as you look back on that, do you regret getting so involved in politics? Do you think it was a good thing to do?
I think I got a little too involved in politics, got carried away, frankly. So the goal with this sort of Doge stuff was to try to